So do the naysayers give you bulletin board material? Does it fuel you in some way?
It's a balance, right? Because you don't want them to become the loudest voice in your head. And I think that's in any industry.
Sure.
No matter if you're, doing sports or commentating or whatever. And so there's a little fuel there. There's a little fuel there of, okay, watch me. I'm going to stay quiet, let my horse do the talking, and let him go prove it out.
All right, that was trainer Jena Antonucci, who became the first female trainer to win the Belmont Stakes in June with her horse, Arcangelo. She was about to watch Arcangelo race again in his next big race. Hadn't raced since the Travers Stakes up in Saratoga, and guess what? Arcangelo did it again.
As Arcangelo has opened up a 3-length lead. It's Arcangelo and disarm 1-2. Arcangelo, another Travers for Javier Castellano. Congratulations, Jena Antonucci. What a training job.
Hey everybody, welcome into this episode of Lunch with Lindsay. So I am just so inspired by Jena Antonucci and her story, and I have gotten to know her over the past few months. Ever since I watched her win the Belmont Stakes, I literally watched it on the screen and I said, I have got to talk to her. I want to know her story. I want to know how she's done it. And here's what I'm excited for you to know is the way that she has proven herself and is still proving herself in a man's world, but also as a horse trainer, her attention to detail, her method of training, how that's a little bit different from some other trainers, but also the way that Jena connects with the horses that she loves so much. It is so clear that there are so many things that she thinks that are important in her job that are also so relatable to all of us in everyday life, just as humans, as people, as friends, as people that connect with one another on a daily basis. So I can't wait for you to watch this conversation. Jena met me up in Saratoga to talk ahead of the Travers. She talked about family, she talked a lot about friendship, and she certainly talked about what it was like trying to prove yourself around the highest stakes. So we're overlooking the paddock here at Saratoga. What does this space symbolize to you?
Saratoga for me is just so much history. Saratoga racing is older than baseball. Mm-hmm. And when you think about that and all that has come through these grounds and the historicness of what Saratoga stands for, it's so Americana in that regard. So that's what I feel and see here is just like the grounds talking of the amazing people and amazing horses that have been here is just, if the trees could talk, the stories that they could tell would just be, you would just sit there in awe and listen to them. So
what stories are the ones that like pique your interest the most? What types of stories around this sport?
I think that the horse being such the unifier of bringing people together and watching so many people of great personality, from movie stars to the everyday guy or gal, it's just being able to hear so many walks of life talk about the same thing.
Jena's laughing because she knows I have a bee phobia.
We're working through it. We're
called
working
immersive
through it
together.
Therapy. Immersive therapy.
Are you releasing bees?
Told you, it'll be fine.
It's fine.
Just like,
keep going.
They're fine. They just want to say hi with a little whisper.
Oh.
See?
Oh,
and he'll leave.
Dear God. And now he's going to climb inside.
He'll be back. He'll leave. Okay. He wants this.
If
I
you
told
see
you this
him
was
on
really
me, just tell me. He wants that.
Immersive therapy.
Thank you.
You're going to leave sweating.
I will. This is a great icebreaker. Okay, keep going.
Just to be able to listen to, and I think in my time in doing this, it's really wild to sit and listen to people that can be, doctorates, MBAs, or an athlete, and talk with like the foreman or a groom or just a casual fan. And they have just this wild connection of just through the horse. And everything else disappears when it becomes about the horse and about the sport.
You're saying like there's not...
It's the great equalizer.
Yeah, no hierarchy per se, no diversity that comes into play as an issue, right?
Everyone in that moment, everything else melts away. And it's about how the horse looks, how they're training, how they're going to race. Like everyone becomes passionate about the horse. And I think horses emote people. And I think it's why people become so impassioned about it, because they make you feel. And so when you watch, the likes of that in the paddock, just to sit back, and I love observing people, whether it's at a boat ramp on the weekend, and that's always, whoa, some people shouldn't, you can't drive backwards with a trailer, you shouldn't be driving forwards, but, watching people try and back a boat down a ramp and to hear of watching people have that common thread of the horse, and just watching that is just, it's really special. It really is.
What were you like as a kid?
That's an interesting question. I've always been a bit of a loner, and in my own space, I always got along with everybody. I never believed in the cliques. I thought those were ridiculous and exhausting. Wasn't the cheerleader girl by any means. I was very much an athlete, jockette, rode horses. So wasn't the weird kid by any means, but my parents really always drove into my head, education is very important. And so I was very blessed to go to good schools growing up. And bad grades wasn't an option. The first conversation if grades weren't right were no riding. And so it was a very good, obviously, motivator to make sure that you stayed on point. When I turned 16, it was like, well, do you want a car or a horse? I'm like, a horse, because if I get the car, I may not get the horse, but you're going to get tired of driving me. So let's do a horse first, and then we'll back into a car. And that's where.
Oh my gosh. So what was that horse?
She was actually a thoroughbred, retired. And I had a horse previous to that, but,
okay.
And this was later as, when I was again 16, and she was I rescued her out of, and I hate the word rescue, but she was like out in a field, and she was a thoroughbred, and retrained her and made her a show horse. And yeah, Bella,
wow.
Her name was Bella Morte, beautiful love.
So is that where was that along your journey of really wanting to be around, work with, even compete with horses?
I was 16, so I'd started when I was about 3. And I had a lot of different riding exposure and horse exposure, through all of that. But I think it was just part of being a teenager, and my parents always knew where I was because I was at the barn. But parents were divorced, so if I was at my dad's, I was at the barn. If I was at my mom's, when can we get to the barn kind of thing. And so that group of girls that I was able to be around through so much of my childhood and into, my adolescent years, it's, I moved a lot as a kid, so I didn't have like the one hometown friend that you've had for life. But my hometown friends came from that world. And that's crazy now to look back. Because there were times, where you trying to find your identity in life a little bit of who am I and what is this? And, I didn't have those roots, those hometown roots somewhere. And so looking back now and being able to have those friendships, 40 years later, that was my home and my hometown. And so you don't realize that until you get older, right?
Yeah.
Then you look back and it's like, oh, wow, that's really kind of cool. Okay, so those are my people. And so that's been probably the biggest constant for my life throughout. But, I think that the biggest thing through childhood was handling adversities. I had a single mom. And so my parents were young. And so raised by, young parents, she was doing the best that she could, in that kind of capacity. And so she's working, and I spent, a lot of time alone in my space, not in a bad way. It just was our circumstance and whatnot. And I went to live with my dad full time when I was 15, turning 16. And so that was a huge pivot, but I just wanted more structure. And it was something that I knew I wanted, which was wild.
Okay.
How do you know that at 15 years old that I want to, sit at the dinner table with the family thing? And so moving to my dad's.
Yeah. Wow. So you moved from where to where?
I moved from my dad's to my mom's, my mom's to my dad's in South Florida.
Okay.
And he was remarried for quite some time, and I had a younger half sister and whatnot. So it was just that I was seeking that family unit at that point in my life. And So I think if anything, I've always had the ability to look out and back in a weird way of just, and how or why, I have no idea. Like it just, whoever, thank you for looking out for me. And so that was an interesting transition. And my stepmom was very, very tough on me and in good ways, and wanted me to be more girly, and we're going to put pink in your room. We're going to this. And I was like, can we go purple? Like, can we find a compromise here on this? You know, you're going to go to the debutante ball. I'm like, no, that one I'm not doing. There's my hard line on you here. So those kinds of things. But, you know, but all the exposures and stuff that she taught, you know, that weren't my mom's skill set, that were more her skill set, you know, it was a great balance for me.
Wow.
In that transition. And
how then was the relationship with your mom at that point?
My mom and I actually didn't speak then for like almost the next 5 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't have a great reason of why or what. I think it was just me needing to find my legs and my space. It wasn't anything contentious. It was just I was ready to, I needed to do something different. You know, just not having that more structure that I think I just needed. It just was the right time in my life.
Yeah.
You know, I went to a Catholic high school then at that point, and actually that was one of the big reasons I did move. The school that I was in was an excellent academic school, college preparatory, blah, 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 but I didn't fit. It was very not me. Education was phenomenal, but I came back one summer. This is classic. This absolutely defines it. And one of the girls that I had a couple years had been there with, she was like, "Oh my God, your nose looks great. Who did it?" I was like, wait? I think I was like 9th grade. I was like, what do you mean? Well, you got a nose job. I'm like, oh, no, I did not. But thanks for that. And so like that was that vein. And that was just so
like
not
your
me.
icing on the cake.
Yeah, it was like, who says that?
Tough.
That's a lot. So I ended up transferring my sophomore year to St. Thomas Aquinas, which is a huge producer of football players.
Yes.
Actually.
Yep.
And, you know,
in South Florida.
In South Florida.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Coach Smith was the director of athletics then still, and did all of the head coach
when
for
I
the
covered
team.
the Dolphins, that was a feeder, like a
huge feed. And so, you know, back in the 90s, it was still, you know, very much a powerhouse in the sports, and that vein of just, I loved the sports aspect of it, and just having, that was just more my vibe. I played sports at the school prior, but it was, you know, very private and just a different vibe. So that was one of the big things. My mom was very much against me transferring schools. And so my dad was, let me transfer to go to St. Thomas.
There's something about, I think, when you just know that it's not a fit, whatever it is, if it's a school, if it's a job, if it's what have you, right? And you feel that and you know that, but it's also not perceived as the thing you should be doing. I think that's a lesson that the younger people can get that, the better off, right? Like listening to that, maybe it's gut, maybe it's intuition.
And I think for me, like I wasn't taking a step back in education. You know, I was still at a very quality education school. It was just the time I was still playing sports in high school as well as riding. And so to have the opportunity to kind of go up the next level, I ended up doing like stats or whatever for the football team and this and that. Like
That's cool.
I just really, it was just my vibe a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so it worked for me. And then my stepmom actually ended up passing away between my junior and senior year in high school. And so you learn a lot about life when you have such a huge shift and a family unit. And so sometimes, you know, your biggest adversities and things of growth happen through life experiences. And so I think that has offered a huge perspective on life as I've gotten older, where sometimes some of the things that people think are so important, you're like, okay, you go ahead and do that. Because that's not really that big or that important when you deal with real stuff. So I think in learning that so early offers you a different perspective on things and what trauma that brings to a childhood at such a young age.
A loss, like a significant, right.
Yeah, and you have to learn how to deal. And so I will give my stepmom a ton of credit. She was very much about, you know, going to talk to somebody, and, you know, we would term it mental health now, but back then it's like, you're going to talk to a shrink or this or that. You know, it was such a taboo thing.
Yeah.
But when I moved from my mom to my dad's, that was something that she actually very much, was in such support of, and like just, and I actually wanted to be able to go talk to somebody and be like, I just want to make sure I'm like tied on straight. Like, I've seen a lot of things growing up and this and that. I want to make sure that I'm okay. And I'll never forget one of the main questions the counselor asked me was, well, when you have a problem, who do you go talk to? And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, who do you go talk to? I'm like, I just deal with it. And I remember the look on her face, and obviously I was 15 years old. She was like, that's not like the norm. Like, she didn't say it wasn't normal. She's like, but usually people go and talk to somebody to resolve a problem or whatever. And I'm like, okay. Like, I just figure it out.
So you just like
internalize it, Rolodex it, just sort through it and figure it out. And so that's been a skill set, I think, that's been there my entire life. And obviously I think helps, and what I've chosen to do for my occupation now is you're just constantly problem solving and triaging everything, worst case, best case, how, what, and, and all the rest. So,
wow.
Yeah, there you go.
So
there's some stuff for you.
There's some stuff. How about then the education of horses, right? So what happened next when, you after you're in high school, you're a teenager, what got you to the next step towards this journey of where you are now?
My, the farm that I was riding for at the time in high school, they were high-level competition barn, and they were based out of South Florida. And through the summers, they travel. And so literally grad night's a big thing in Florida, go to Disney and do all that stuff, right? So
high school?
High school, yeah, you're like senior grad night. So
that's amazing.
We drove my truck up and left it at the rest plaza on the turnpike. Got it cleared with the school, okay? That after grad night, when we were driving back to South Florida at whatever time of the night it was, we were stopping at that rest stop. I was getting off the bus, and that rest stop was closest to the horse show. And I drove there to the horse show in the morning to go show. And literally the day after graduation, we were loading up in the semis and driving up the East Coast to go horse show all summer.
So you organized that, you got it all set up. That's amazing.
Yep.
And then at what point did you end up pivoting to, okay, I want to actually be a trainer?
I think it was a progressive thing.
You said it wouldn't let you go when I first talked to you about it. Do you remember that? Like, it just kept coming
There's
back?
been 3 different, where I've walked, I worked for a large home builder for several years doing permitting became the youngest permitting manager that they had in South Florida, permitting new home construction and large home construction. So communities and communities. And I loved it. I loved building and all of that. And then I got married and lived some of that life, and that didn't end successfully. It's a good marriage, just didn't end successfully. It happens. And then started riding and training for show horse stuff, nothing other racing, and bringing those horses along, and transitioned to a really nice show barn. I've been in my early 20s at that point, early 20s. And they would be leaving Wellington and be going to the Hamptons for the summer, just the normal circuit of horse show land. And phenomenal horses, phenomenal people, phenomenal clients. And I was hacking horses one day, and just giving their exercise and whatnot. And I was like, this just isn't real. Like, I'm doing what I love, but it's like, it just felt empty. And I was like, this isn't my vein. Like, I love this, but this is like, I don't feel fulfilled doing this. And so I told them, because I was asked to continue on with them, I said I would love to. It would be an absolutely amazing opportunity, but no, this isn't for me. And I'd grown up riding in South Florida and doing all those horse shows. Like, all that was very easy for me. And so I pivoted to a farm in Orlando, ran that farm, started teaching a lot of kids how to ride and doing all of that, and was retraining a lot of thoroughbreds to be show horses, because we were getting them out of Ocala, because it's only about an hour and a half away. Yep. And so I would go up to Ocala, get some horses that we were going to be transitioning to their next careers. And my grandparents were involved in racing from about the time I was 10 until about the year 2000, 2001. And I'd gone up to the farm to go visit where some of their horses were, and I was curious on how horses were developed. They call it the breaking and training process. And so I wanted to know how and why, so that I could bring it back to the show horses and do it better. Why when I kick this horse, it does this? Why when I ask this, it does that? What am I missing in all of this? Of how can I do this part better? So really just being hungry and wanting to have that
sort of about the
knowledge.
communication. Like, was it like you want to know how?
I want to know what's making them tick. What's the base work that we are putting in these horses, so that I'm not having to decode it 3 or 4 years later.
Yeah.
And I just got bit by the bug. I loved how fast they learned, the speed, the athleticism. I always knew that thoroughbreds were really smart and very versatile, but watching them through the initial process was fascinating to me. And then knowing that whatever we were working on, we were creating that for that horse's lifetime. The better job that we did starting them set them off on their trajectory for the rest of their life, no matter if they became successful racehorses or successful pasture ornaments. It didn't matter. And so that was very compelling for me to learn that process and to be exposed to those kind of horses. And it was very high-end horses, and just that process of what it looked like. Wayne Lucas's training program, it was his training program that I got to work under at the farm. He had moved his training operation out of California to Florida.
Okay.
And so having that opportunity to be exposed to his program.
And was he around frequently?
He would come in and check horses and whatnot, of who was going where and whatnot. But, it was just working underneath that structure and that attention to detail and how and what. It worked for me. I have a very analytical brain, and I love business side of things and how all those things tick. And so being able to go through all of that at that level was like, oh, that's interesting. And again, I got married. My ex-husband was a phenomenal veterinarian, and that's what thrust me into the veterinary world for 4.5 years of just having, I always say it was a master's degree in veterinary world. And I'm so grateful to have had that opportunity where just seeing it, living it, everything about our life was about it. So from reproductive work all the way through, the sports medicine and lameness side of it. And so it really started that footprint of me going on to train later on. But that was also via...
But you didn't know at the time.
I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, it was just, it's where our life ended up at that time. And having that exposure to those kinds of horses and, all of that work of learning, it was, you don't know. There was a really great, when I was in Catholic high school, not to go backwards on you, but we would do retreats and encounters, and that's very common in the Catholic high school environment. And so we would do these weekend.
Encounter is, by the way, the name of my favorite boutique in Saratoga.
Oh, fantastic.
So that might come.
Well, noted.
We'll remember that.
We'll remember that. Right. But we would do these weekend encounters, and I became a leader in the campus ministry, part of things. And we were talking one night, and there was a priest speaking and this and that. And I said, and I remember being like, God, everything is so, you don't know where you're going and da-da-da, and you're 17, 18 years old, you're kids.
Yeah. And
he's like, and I'm paraphrasing him 100%, but he's like, life is a chain link fence. And at the time, when you're staring at it here, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And then you look back, and there's this beautiful pattern that's behind you that you have created all along the way. And obviously it stuck with me, 40 plus years later, but it was very, very true. And so to go through life's challenges and hurdles and, adversities, it may look like an absolute shit show at the time, excuse my language, but then later on, you're like, that's what that was for. Okay, that's what that was for. Okay, now I get it. And so to have gone through these personal relationships while I'm developing work depth that's going to carry through to the latter part of my life now I'm immensely grateful for those experiences and those exposures, and being a student of observation and watching all these programs. So when I started my own business, I was doing reproductive work. Foaling mares, raising young horses, preparing them for sales rings. And so, I had absorbed all of that knowledge from all the farms we were able to go to and how and what people did. I'm like, oh, that works. Oh, that doesn't work. Oh, that makes sense. And it just stored. And so that kept coming forward. And then I was missing the competitive I love the farm stuff, and I love the baby stuff and the
Yeah.
moms, and making sure we get those kiddos out alive and they're healthy and thriving, and imprinting them, you know, from second one of their lives is so amazing.
Yeah.
But I missed the competition. You know,
Yeah.
I missed that
Absolutely, I understand.
that drive. And so I started rehabilitating and fixing horses that were at the track and sending them back to trainers. And then you follow them and how their careers are. And I would get frustrated. Oh, that horse is fine. Why can't they figure it out? And, oh, you know, and probably being a little bit ignorant and young and
Sure. But
And-
I firmly believe we're just meant to be naive for a span of time, because if we're not, you don't do the things that you
aren't
do
brave
during that
enough.
time. Right. Absolutely.
You aren't brave enough.
There are things that I've done that I look back, I'm like, I can't believe I made that phone call. I can't believe I said those words to that executive because
Yeah.
I thought right?
Yeah.
Like,
But you full send sometimes,
Yeah.
and sometimes it lands, and
sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, no, noted. Okay,
so
we'll
wait,
do
so
that
yeah,
again.
so keep going.
But and so when you train show horses, you don't have to have a trainer's license. It's just that world is different. There's no pari-mutuel wagering. There's
Got it,
no
yep.
betting that goes on. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go train race horses. Why not? And I then learned I had to have a trainer's license and all of that. So I went and did all of that and took my test. And
How long did that take? Is it?
not very. I mean,
Okay.
once I got the appointment set, it was, you know, funny enough, there isn't like a book to read of like how you become a horse trainer and here's everything you need to study. That doesn't exist, for good reason, because we have plenty of idiots anyways. So we definitely don't need to be putting a book in front of non-horse people and going, you can go train now. But so I was a little petrified going in, because I'm like, well, I'm a horsewoman. I've done this since I was 3 years old. Like, what is this going to be? And my biggest struggle was because I didn't come from the racing side, the part of the testing that was very race specific. I had to really slow down and make sure I was understanding this and that and whatnot. But the stewards, every racetrack has stewards, and their job is to basically police racing, what happens in the afternoon and the mornings and whatnot. And they're the ones who pass or fail you. So I can read and write, thankfully. My parents, in their education, thank you.
Yep.
I passed the test, and they were like, we're going to pass you, because they want to know, well, who were you an assistant for? Who did you do this for? Where were you doing this? Blah, blah. Like, that was all there. And I was like, well, that's weird. I'm like, I've been on the farm in Ocala. Like, I run my own business. This is what I do. And we're going to pass you. Just don't effing embarrass us. And I was like,
Wow.
okay, man of authority, no problem. Thanks for that. Vote of confidence.
Wow.
But that was very much the culture of it. And in his opinion, I'm sure he was being like sarcastic and a little bit lighthearted, but also like, listen, girly, toe the toe here. You know,
Yeah.
I don't have a reason to fail you, but geez, you know, we don't know anything about you. That makes us uncomfortable. You know,
Right.
that was a him issue, not a me issue at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so off we naively marched, and I started running horses at Tampa. And we did find the winner's circle quickly, which was the best and worst thing that could have happened. Because then,
That was 2010.
yeah,
Yep.
because then
March is when you first won, right?
my next call then was to Saratoga. Hey, can I get some stalls for the summer? Beep, 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 beep. You know, and it was like, I had winners, and I had the horses that I had spots they fit here. And so I got stalls up here, and my grandparents had been up here. My grandmother lived here full time at the time. And so it was just easy from a family perspective to have that in place. And I marched my happy butt up here with my first group of horses and got my ass absolutely handed to me. Oh,
Wow. Yeah.
you want to talk about testing your constitution. Like,
Really?
oh, because it's just, you know, you go out in the big leagues, you know, it's like taking that AA player and going, okay, go play.
Would you say that was like the toughest lesson that you've had along the way?
No,
Okay.
no. I think it will test your constitution. It will test how serious are you about this. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm almost certain on this. My first win ended. I went winless the first summer here. We shipped back downstate to Belmont, and my first win in New York was with a maiden filly, so a filly that hadn't won yet. She had started. She had run second up here in a stake race.
Wow.
And it was one of Tom Durkin's best calls because she was like 100-1, obviously. It was hilarious. And she beat some nice horses, and that was my first one in New York.
Wow.
Yep. It's crazy.
So the Belmont. So when you think back to that final stretch, what goes through your mind now when you think about it?
It was such relief.
Really?
It was such relief of all of the people that don't have the courage to tell you to your face what they really think or really feel about you. And again, these are all their issues and their thoughts. And so I'm very careful, and as I've gotten older, really clearly understanding that. The no's that people give you are often don't have anything to do with you. It's where they are. And so a lot of people ask, oh, it must be so much more pressure now. It's so much more this and so much more that. I'm like, no, actually it was, there's that last 50 yards or so where no one's coming by him, where you're like, holy crap, this is like happening. And that 50 yards literally felt like the longest stretch of time in my life. Because you're like, just wire, come on. There's certain races where the wire can't come fast enough, and certain races where you're like, wait, don't come yet, my horse is coming. So in that moment, it was it couldn't come fast enough at that point because you're there. And it was like, finally, okay, we did this. Like, this happened. And just the first thought was just being so happy for the team and just so like, you guys did this. Like, John believed in this horse from day one, and he believed in the girl, and he believed in our team. And so that was like the whole in that moment. And, we've jokingly talked about now and how, like, when I looked over to one side, Fiona, my assistant, who's very Irish and very strong, and I look over at her and I'm expecting to see her like, and she's bawling. And I'm like, oh crap, you're not supposed to be crying right now. And then like, I look to my other side and my fiance's standing there and I'm expecting him to be like, yeah. And I look over at him and he's bawling. And I'm like, oh crap. The two people that I expected to be like,
the rocks.
They're like, waterworks. And I'm like, I gotta get it together. I gotta get it together. Oh crap. And so it was literally in that moment that, you just kind of pulled in. And I think in that moment, taking some of what you've learned about me here in the hardest of times is you just transform her a little bit and just pivot. Got this. Okay, game on. Because we've won this race now. But now I know, because there was already a camera up my nostrils the whole time. Now I know there's gonna be a microphone coming not far behind it. I've watched enough of these things to know how this is gonna pivot pretty quickly here. And it was just shifting modes in that point, and you enjoy that for the second, but you've got more business to handle at that point. I'm watching my horse gallop out, making sure he's okay and everyone's well and good, and how he's coming back. And they usually do the interview with the jockey. And they do that also to give time so all the horses can get, unsaddled and go back. So all these things are playing in the background of my head, understanding what's going on, but also having to stay super present in that moment to handle our business. And so the immediateness of it, though, was just, it was such a huge relief of the little girl can do it.
What did Fiona say to the horse before? Because I heard you say that you watched her talking to that horse before the race.
I think all of us had, our own little moments. I just appreciate the relationship that the horse gives us. And so, like, when you ask the question, like, I get the flashback of being able to go hang out in the stall with him when he's sleeping or laying down, and us having our personal moment, and when Fiona was able to have her personal moments. And so everyone's had their time with the horse to be able to lean in and tell him the fly's gone, or the bee. Just to be able to have that personal moments with him of letting him know that you believe in him.
So full disclosure, what'd you say, Saratoga? It's not Saratoga if there aren't bees.
Yeah, it's the season.
So we had
They're
to
working hard.
They're working hard. We had to adjust our lunch situation, and now they're having some lunch.
Yes.
But it's safe. Okay, so how is it that I'm going to back up. When you have moments with any horse, but Arcangelo specifically, when you do that, whether, like you said, like if he's laying down sleeping, how do you know that he hears and knows?
You feel it. You feel it. And it's, you have to let yourself be vulnerable and slow down. So you and I have talked about this before about biorhythms, and every being has biorhythms, and humans tend to be a little more bing, 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 with some being faster than others on the biorhythms of human beings. Whales tend to be the slowest. So if you're thinking of like frequency lines, and horses fall somewhere in the middle. So if you come at a horse and you're humming, that horse will be like, whoa, because they don't use words, they feel everything that's around them. And so the biggest thing that you can do going into a barn is just take that breath that we talked about earlier today, where you come in, you see the horse take those breaths and just bring it down a level. Turn your volume down. And when you turn your volume down, you hear their volume. Because they don't turn theirs up. They're constant, which is why they're amazing for therapy, for veterans and for children and for the handicapped, because they're so constant. But if you're yelling at them through your energy, you won't hear them. And so when you go and take those personal, private moments with a horse, and you can just step back in your space and let their space come to you, it's very warm. You can literally, it's palpable. Like you can feel it, and that is when you touch them and you can just feel them. And it's just really just, again, like for me, like before we train him right now, especially when we're on the track waiting to go train, I'll, usually just put my hand on him for a minute and I just want to feel him for a minute and see where he is in a space, and that he's not, boom, 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 that the heart rate's not just coming through. And Robert they can feel their heart rate underneath the saddle and stuff too. And so it's just feeling that horse in that moment and in their space. And if they're vibrating, okay, why are you vibrating right now? What's going on that you're not where you should be? So it's a gift. I've said that forever, that they give that to us. And if you're aware enough in your space to slow down enough, it's pretty amazing.
Wow. How much of a gift do you think it is for you to be able to understand that though, right? Like, why do you do that so well?
Yeah, see, I don't know. And that's what's crazy. Like, I thought everyone could do it, right? Like when I came to the racetrack, I was training, and how I see a horse trainer, how I see them move, and what I see of them ignorantly. Well, you're training horses, clearly you see it too. Wrong. That's not the case, as I've come to learn. And so I don't know, I guess, if you believe in God and believe in bigger things, that if that's the gift that's been given to me, it's taken me a long time to be okay in that space and know that I'm not going to get it right every time. But when we do get it right, it's so right. And so it's a gift. It's an amazing gift. And I'm very appreciative to be able to experience it in any capacity.
I found it really interesting so right after the Belmont and after the win, in that first interview, after you got the camera up your nose and Tom Rinaldi's coming at you, and you said your now legendary quote about, if you don't have a seat at the table, make your own table. And when you were telling your story, I was thinking, how wild is it that your story from your childhood is about being at a family table, and that's part of what you wanted, about your craving always to be, you're a loner, you say, but being around people as part of a team. That's really interesting.
I think you learn so much as you get older, at least I try to, and as much as I can be an extrovert about things, I've learned that I'm really more of an introvert that can do the extrovert thing. But I think because of my energy's sensitivity to people and horses and things, it's something I've had to learn to manage better as I've gotten older, because I can go into the room and enjoy everybody but I am depleted afterwards, where I'm like, whew, I'm exhausted. It's not just because I'm sleep deprived, but it's
You're
just
feeling everything.
I feel
people are.
I feel all of it. I can.
It's a classic empath.
Yeah,
Sitch.
totally. And so it's something that I've had to learn to manage better as an adult and understand it better, so that I'm a better version of me. And with being a better version of me, I'm a better version to the people that are closest to me. And so I think that's been a huge growth factor for me through it all. And, you know, Tom asking that was, you know, people like, oh, did you have that written down?
Yeah.
And, no, I'm not that smart. I can be
so
smart,
good.
but I'm not that smart. And it was literally the cleanest version of F you that I could come up with in that moment. And that's honest to God's truth, where it was, you know, so many tables that you yearn to be part of because you feel you've deserved it and you've worked your butt off for it and you were worthy to be there and to have that voice when people wanted to make you invisible and make you go away. And I think sometimes people let those voices become their voice. And again, by whatever strength of whoever's had my back, I just refuse to let those voices be my voice. And it's not saying I did it right every day. I mean, there was plenty of days where, how am I gonna get out of bed today and go do this? And whether it was, you know, getting to the barn or whatever challenges and adversities were running a business and paying the bills and paying the employees and making all of those real life things happen. It just, in that moment, it was just like, you know what? We freaking did this. We built this. We weren't given the big fancy horse that was supposed to go do it. We weren't given the red carpet of, you know, entitlement. We earned it and we busted our ass for it. And so in that moment, it was just like, you know, building out the things we'd been building from, you know, horseology back at the farm to the racing side of, you know, I was really close to just being completely done with racing and just doing only all the farm stuff and sending horses back out to trainers and this and that. And, you know, Manny and I had talked a lot about that. And it was just, and then this happened and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's different now. But, you know.
And why, real quick, why were you so close to doing that?
You know, it's, what do you know, you're trying to find, we've talked about life-work balance.
Yeah.
How do you find it? What does it look like to you?
When are you spinning your wheels type thing?
Yeah, like what am I, you know, for me, we're supposed to win races, but winning races doesn't move the needle in life. We're not curing anything. We're not fixing anything. It's part of our occupation. But that's why I think I've always leaned into the relationships around me and the people around me, because at the end of the day, when we're pushing daisies up instead of looking at them, how you have impacted people around you, I think, is the biggest gift you can leave. And so, you know, not chasing the finish wire anymore was very real. Being able to be home more and to spend, you know, more time with my grandmother and Manny's kids and our life. And it was just finding that balance of, you know, what is most important on all of this. And so the quote was that of, you know, we did this as a team and we made this happen organically, literally organically, from one guy that believed in the team of girls that had been through enough of garbage through the industry of not getting the answers he wanted to hear and see, and him having the constitution to not sell, and not sell, and not sell. And just the other day at a charity thing, I had an agent come up to me. I'm the guy that called you. You made me look really smart. You know, I knew that horse was a good horse, but if it's funny, would have gone to him had I bought it. And I was like, you don't hear it, do you? You still don't hear it.
Wow.
And I was like, I looked at him and went, huh, okay. Like, what do you say in that moment, right?
Yeah.
And so I just, that's where the quote came from. It was just the, you know, we built the table with the right people that fit us. And it, everyone was able to shine and grow. And we hope that everyone continues to do that. And my commitment has always been to the horses, whatever horses I steward and have the opportunity to touch, to do the absolute best job that we can with what we're given. And we might not always get it perfectly right, but if we carry forward that intention with every horse, that's the best that I can do in my capacity.
What would you say to young women, any youngster really, about how do you build the table? Like, how did you do it?
Stubbornly, super stubbornly. And I think some of it's feel and gut, and not, like any relationship, personal or business, you can't expect one person to fill everything that you need in your life, right? You don't expect Craig to check every box for you to find your ultimate happiness. And I don't expect that of Manny. And so the same thing works over into work life. So Fiona has all the things that she contributes. Katie has all the things that she contributes. I have all the things that I contribute back. And it's understanding that as you're building this out, you don't have to like every single thing that that person does, but as long as they're contributing with a like-minded goal and a like-minded philosophy, be uncomfortable with how they might get there, because you might learn something from them. Well, that's not how I would do it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's how she does it or he does it, and that works for them for this many reasons. And so it's, it's one thing that I've always bragged on with Fiona. She's a strong woman. She has, her center. You're going to hear her opinion. You don't have to like it, and that's completely fine. And that's how you grow, and you learn to say, I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with this, and here's my why. And so that's how we've built our little people and our little table and our little thing that we do, is by being okay to be different and be wrong, and accept faults, and be willing to run to the sideline sometimes before you can go to the end zone. There's a lot of sideline running. Little shuttle pass for a couple yards here.
That's where you get the best stories sometimes.
Yeah.
Do you find that having to be really honest is something that also that has helped you in that? Because when I hear you talking, I'm like, yeah, that means having hard conversations with people and saying, not being rude, not being mean, but just like you said, I like this, I don't like that, or is it?
I don't even think about it.
Yeah.
Because I think you're just coming, maybe be respectful of how someone needs to hear the message, but I think it's harder to not have the conversation. It doesn't go away.
Right. That's very true.
You still got to deal with the it. You can put as much sugar on it as you want. You might get some bees, but you still have to deal with the it. And so, I don't remember where I heard it, but it was like that 3 seconds of awkward uncomfortableness. Just deal with it. And then what? Then you're like, oh God, I made a really big deal out of that. That was stupid. And it's past you and it's done. But not dealing with it, that little molehill all of a sudden has become this huge thing. And then you lose proportion. And I think for me, if there's a disagreement about something, it's staying focused on what the it is that the disagreement is about. I think, personal life and business, but it's so easy to spin off.
Yeah. Melvin always says it's never just really about the thing. There's usually things, right? Or something deeper that you're like, okay, right.
But stay focused on what you came into the conversation with. If there's something else, let's deal with that. But what is the thing that this has started this conversation? And then let's resolve that and then move to whatever the else is. So that's just a philosophy I think I just try and practice and live by. Not always successfully.
How interested are you in evolving the sport? How much is that on your radar?
My shovel's little. I've had a pretty good work ethic. I can only dig so fast, though. I think everyone has to pick up their own shovel. It's a phenomenal sport, and I very clearly understand how and why we are where we are. And it's not because men have been making decisions. I'll say that with a wink and a nod. As a society, we have shifted away from land and soil, and have become more techie and in our phones. And so I think people understand nature less and have lost the understanding of the relationship humans have with horses and the why I mean, since the beginning of time, humans have had no relationship with any other animal like they have with a horse. From medieval times through war and beyond. And so I very clearly respect and understand the people that want to be way over here, and it'll never be their thing, and that's fine, but they don't need it to expect it to not be our thing. Because there's a whole lot of people in the middle that love the sport and love the horse and understand there's inherent risks that come with it, but understanding that we are stewarding and evolving as fast as we can to ensure the best outcomes as often as possible will continue to be our focus and my focus, and that's all we can do.
What do you think is the best move forward that's happened that you're most happy about in that vein?
You know, people love and hate HISA, which is the, you know, our law now, and it's, you know, federally passed. It's a both sides of the aisle legislation that now is the law of the land. And I liken it to NBA, NASCAR, PGA. And we've talked about this also previously, where now we have the same rules in every state. And so when golfers go from state to state to state, they have the same rules, the same parent company, the same
Governing body. Right.
Every golf course has their profits and puts on the show, just like we do with racing, and same with NASCAR. I mean, you could speak to that way better than I can, but everyone's running with the same restrictor plates. Everyone's running the same tires. Everyone's running with the same specs, because it wasn't that way at one time. And then all of a sudden you're going from track to track, and it's like, what's going on here? And so same with the NFL. So I think there's opportunity within the sport for everyone to make their piece of profit. But having HISA in place is giving us the footprint of rules and anti-doping and medication reform and all of those buzz topics that the media has been very flagrant with and sensationalizing headlines. And they're sensationalizing headlines at the expense of the hardworking people that dedicate their lives to this. But they don't see that, and I respect that they don't see it, because they don't want to slow down a minute to come and understand it. Oh, horse racing should just be done. Well, why? Oh, because horses die. Are you going to go drive tomorrow? You are. Do you realize over 40,000 people die every year driving a car? 40,000 plus people die a year driving a car.
Yeah.
So the auto industry is getting better, doing more safety, doing more this, doing more that. But they're not running to the auto manufacturer saying, stop making cars because you're killing people. And well, it's different. Why is it different? Thank you for appreciating the horse. You've never been on the backside. You've never ridden a horse. You've never touched one. You're behind your keyboard telling us that we shouldn't do this. Who has empowered you to tell us we're wrong? Do you have a cat? Do you have a dog? Don't ever let it die. It better live forever. If not, you are negligent and you are inhumane. And that's the miss. And people are always going to get impassioned about their position, and horses make people emote. Pets make people emote. And that's a gift, to have that relationship with another being in that way. But it's allowing HISA to do what HISA does, letting them be the authority, letting that squeeze the nefarious actors out, which it's doing. It's not going to happen in a minute, but it is closing the gap. And in doing so, is allowing the me's to win those races.
And from your perspective, as someone who deeply can, for lack of a better term, communicate, so to speak, with them, what do you see as the why? What is it about what they love to do?
It's so cliche with the, horses are, born to run. If you're watching a herd of wild horses, if they're not grazing, they typically aren't walking to the next spot, right? They graze, and then you see the videos, everything goes running somewhere, right? Yeah. And what happens to a horse that gets injured in the wild? You don't have to answer, but
That's it.
that's it. They will become part of the food chain. And so no one wants to see anything suffer or not be handled appropriately. And sometimes the hardest decisions in stewarding these lives is knowing the when, because they are a complicated, fragile animal that when they get sick, things go south faster than you can even imagine. And you can't tell them to go lay in bed for 3 months and heal. And so it's understanding the complexity of who they are. But, you know, horses, again, going back to the beginning of human evolution, have been part of our journey. And there's no reason for them not to be part of our journey moving forward, especially if we're stewarding things the best possible way that we can.
What is your favorite time/moment at the barns or the track, or doing, you know, what it is you do?
In the afternoon, feed time, nighttime, like when it's the quietest. It's really cool to walk down the shed row and feel them in their space and them chill and, you know, doing their thing. You know, they mostly love being in their houses and in their stalls. You know, we get a lot of flack for, oh, they're in their stall 23 hours a day, you know, the barking. Do you understand the why? Well, before you grumble at me, do you understand the why? I appreciate your perspective that they should be running in a green meadow and da-da-da. Like, okay, coming back to reality, because sometimes it's not all about, you know, Snow White and the dwarfs and, you know, the fairyland that we have been painted in life. But horses, the race horses especially, have such a high caloric burn when they're exercising and doing. It's very different from when they're out in the wild. So they go out and burn 30,000 plus calories doing their job and breezing and racing. They need that time to recoup, rest, eat, and do all of those things to carry on, carry good weight, carry good flesh, and to be athletes. We are dealing with the highest level athletes. Are you going to tell an NFL player, take today off, don't worry about training, just go hang out on the couch? It's not going to happen. He's going to get injured because he's going to be soft. He's not going to be tight. He's not going to be ready. He's not going to be sharp. And so these horses have better health care. I mean, if we need an x-ray, literally like the vets at the barn, x-rays taken, you have it immediately. Good luck getting that in human medicine, you know. We'll give you your results in 3 weeks. You know, I know it's not right. No, you're fine. And so, you know, from that point of view, in stewarding, you know, the best possible environments for them. But it's most fun to walk through the barn during their quiet time and watch them in their space.
And have them all peaceful.
Yeah. And they'll be snarky, or, you know, a baby will be a baby and an older grumpy one might be an older grumpy one, but it's fun to watch them in that space.
Do you have like a secret, not secret, but a goal that is just something there? Like what would be next if you could choose something for you and your team to enjoy?
And this is going to sound boring. I want to stay in the moment, continuing to treat people right and stewarding those relationships. The horses are going to do what they're going to do. And so I find you have to be very careful in life about how you set goals. And there's a valedictorian that did a great speech a few years ago about, I think he was a swimmer or something, and he had like won a big meet and this and that. And he had, all of his life, he had aimed for that. And then he won it. Now what? Now what? And so it's very, for me, being very careful about that, because setting a goal can be very limiting. What's past that goal? And so committing, the goal for me is always to commit to treating people well on your journey, being mindful of who's around you, and keep aspiring for great things, or that would be cool to do, or that would be neat to do. And, you know, did I ever think I would see the silks of my horse in the infield at Belmont hanging under, you know, the gazebo? No. But did I ever think, oh, that would be really cool? Yeah. You know, and not watching what other people accomplish, going, God, I wish I could do that. Geez, I wish I could do that. Because you may be limiting yourself on that person's accomplishment where yours might be so much bigger. And so I think being mindful and present of doing things the best way you possibly can, you're going to mess up along the way. It's like, okay, that was a bad mistake. Let me push this forward again. And just trying to live with the best intention to do right by those around you and let the good stuff happen that's meant to be. Can't control everything. You stop trying to control everything, really good things happen.
That's when the good stuff happens.
Yeah.
That's what people
and that's
say,
hard.
right?
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
You know, and it's you know, the mama bear and all of us, whether you have children or not, want to protect everything and make everything perfect and whatnot, and just lead with the right intention. That's my goal.
I did not even know half of that story before I sat down to have that conversation with Jena. And the other thing is the bees were real. So I'm still working on that. But as I think through what Jena has taught me, I wanted to share that she also kind of put me to work. She let me tag along with her to show me behind the scenes what it was like in the morning at a racetrack as she's getting ready to work out the horses. So go check that out on my YouTube because that was so eye-opening. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe and listen to all the other episodes that are up there. I would love to hear your thoughts on what you want to hear more of. And of course, you can get the audio version of this podcast anywhere you get your podcast. So thanks to Family Made for the partnership, and thanks to Pete for shooting this. All right, I'll see you next time.